What do we want?
Green New Deal!
When do we want it?
Now!
What do we want?
Green New Deal!
When do we want it?
Now!
What do we want?
Green New Deal!
When do we want it?
Now!
When do
right.
we want it?
Now!
When do we want it?
Now!
When do we want it?
Now!
Well, let me thank the Congresswoman, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, for helping lead this effort. Let me thank all of the groups that are behind us today who understand the urgency of the moment. And when we talk about a Green New Deal today and now, we mean it because the planet is in crisis. The truth is that 5 out of the last 6 years have been the warmest on record. As we speak at this moment, the great city of Venice, Italy, is underwater, having suffered torrential rainfall similar to the rainfall that hit Houston, Texas, just a few months ago. California continues to fight wildfires, and hundreds of thousands of people have lost their electricity. And right now, Australia is on fire. As a result of melting Arctic ice caps and the warming of our oceans, major cities throughout the world, cities like Miami, New York City, Charleston, London, Shanghai, and Hong Kong, will likely be underwater in the next 50 years. All over the world, drought is turning farmland into desert, cutting back on food production. The United Nations estimates that there will be over 100 million climate refugees in search of food, water, and a minimal standard of living. And when you have that kind of migration, you have national security issues. The planet Earth is in severe danger, and we are facing a global crisis. We must listen in this country and around the world to the scientists. And the Green New Deal that the Congresswoman and I are fighting for is the only program out there that does that. And today we are talking about one aspect of the Green New Deal. There's a lot more to be talked about. But today we are focusing on an issue that is too often neglected. And that is that we are going to be making massive cuts in carbon emissions by retrofitting and rebuilding public housing in this country. And that is housing occupied by low-income and working-class Americans, occupied by senior citizens, occupied by people with disabilities, some of the most vulnerable people in the nation. Our public housing stock has been neglected for far too long. In fact, unbelievably, in the midst of a national housing crisis, we are losing 10,000 units of public housing every year. How crazy is that?
That's right. That's right.
The legislation that Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and I are introducing today invests over a 10-year period $180 billion to make public housing in America for 2 million people more energy efficient, safer, and more comfortable. This bill will reduce carbon emissions equivalent to taking off of the roads over 1 million cars. It would reduce public housing costs by 30% and energy costs in public housing by 70%. In other words, we're going to save public housing authorities money, and this will pay for itself. And perhaps equally important, This legislation creates some 250,000 good-paying union jobs. Jobs primarily designed to go to the young people and the working people who live in public housing. They are going to get the job training they need. They're going to get the job training that they need not only to fix up public housing, but to be productive workers all over our economy. What we are doing in this legislation, which is what good legislation is about, is making massive investments in carbon emission, protecting our climate, improving the lives of 2 million people, saving public housing authorities substantial sums of money, and creating 250,000 jobs. This is a win-win-win piece of legislation. And let me just say I am so grateful to have as an outstanding ally and leader in this fight, the Congresswoman from New York. Please welcome Congresswoman Ocasio-Cortez.
Thank you, Senator Sanders. Can we hear it for all our NYCHA residents that came down here today? Can we hear it for our public housing advocates that came down here today? Can we hear it for our intersectional environmental justice champions who came down here to Washington, D.C. to fight for our future and reject the paradigm that environmental justice must come at the cost of our jobs or our economic well-being? We know that's not true. And that's what this legislation here is about. As we speak today, this week, we've learned that in the Bronx alone, 2,400 Bronx public housing residents may be going without heat tonight. That is inhumane. That is an injustice just at the time when temperatures are dropping to 22 degrees at night. That is environmental injustice too. That's a form of environmental injustice as well. And what this legislation is about, and what I'm so proud to say that this legislation is about, is that it adopts the tenets of the Green New Deal, which is first to center frontline communities, those who are impacted most by the climate crisis. That is communities that are low income, communities that are communities of color, Native communities, rural communities. We're going to center them, and that's why we've decided to go with public housing first. Because public housing is infrastructure, and this is an infrastructure bill. So what we're going to do in this legislation is to do nothing less but to decarbonize the entire public housing stock in the United States of America. And in the process of decarbonizing the public housing stock, we are going to put hundreds of thousands of people to work in good paying jobs and giving that preference to public housing residents. In addition to decarbonizing our public housing stock, we're going to make sure that it is at the edge of technological innovation. It is not going to only decarbonize but produce renewable energy on site for the consumption of public housing residents. And then in addition to that, we are improving the quality of life. That's right. That is what this is about. So we're talking about ending food deserts and making sure that there's on-site groceries for residents. We're talking about making sure that there is good paying child care services on site. This is how we show that tackling the climate crisis is an opportunity for us to create an economic stimulus and an economic boon, not just for Wall Street, but for working people. Because if anything, that's the mistake that we saw the last time around. The last time it was big banks that got a bailout. The last time it was Wall Street that got a bailout. This time, we're going to bail out Main Street. We're going to bail out the people. We're going to bail out the working class, make hundreds of thousands of jobs in the process, and show that we can have a people-centered economy while revitalizing our infrastructure and preparing for the future. Because what we're seeing at NYCHA is not just the criminal neglect, the criminal neglect, allowing children to drink, to be exposed to lead and having their brains poisoned, allowing people to experience criminally high rates of asthma because of the buildings that have not been retrofitted. It's not just about filling the gap to end the criminal neglect, but it's about leaping into the future and showing what our economy could look like if we centered working people. That's what this legislation is all about. And not only are we centering frontline communities in the legislation, but we're centering frontline communities in the process. In the process. That's why this legislation has been led not just by housing experts, not just in accordance to the climate science, but it is being led and authored and with the intake and input of public housing residents that are right here. That's why you all are here in Washington, D.C. This is not written by lobbyists. This legislation is not written by policymakers that are too far away from the pain. We've got people, because I believe that in addition to our housing experts, there is no one who knows more about public housing than the residents of public housing themselves. And so with that, I want to introduce to you a champion that we have been working with that has come down here today to testify about the reality and the possibility of this legislation. She is a single mother of 2 living in Holmes Isaac houses. She is the co-founder of the Holmes Isaac Tenants Coalition. She has led numerous rallies from the steps of City Hall in New York City. And Lakeisha Taylor.
Thank you so much. Thank you. I appreciate being here. I want to say thank you so much to AOC, because I have a problem with your first name, but I appreciate it so much. And Bernie Sanders, thank you so much. And I want to also thank the Movement School for allowing me this opportunity to come here and speak to you today. I know you know about the crisis in Niger. I'm going to tell you a little bit about myself. As Ms. Ocasio-Cortez just said, my name is Lakeisha Taylor. I have lived in New York City public housing, which is also known as NYCHA, for 45 of my 46 years. I am a proud, let me say that again, I am a proud mother of 2 young boys. I am growing young men, but I am very proud to say I am doing this. And I am one of the co-founders of the Holmes Isaac Coalition. We founded this organization because we were fed up with the treatment of tenants in our development. And this is because housing decided that they were going to build a building on our playground, and this is called infill. And infill is when NYCHA decides that a playground or parking lot is not being utilized. And I want you to understand that how can something be not utilized in a development when there are over 1,000 families living there? That makes absolutely no sense to me. So we decided that we were going to advocate for all the tenants in NYCHA as well as our development. Living in public housing has always had a bad reputation. There's drugs, there's violence, and to some people, worst of all, poor people. We are not poor. Growing up in public housing, I had people who watched over me. I had 2 parents who paid the bills to put food on the table. What I didn't have was a stable, accountable management called authority system that took care of my living environment, so I wouldn't have to fear about the building crumbling down or the health of my children. NYCHA is full of the good, the bad, and the incompetent. We have working families, we have retirees, people on disability. What we don't have are people looking out for our best interests. With this bill, this will change this whole scenario. As we know, there's a crisis going on with affordable housing. The idea of affordable housing has now become the question of affordable for whom. This bill will change that. One sickness for me or my boys, and I will become dependent on government subsidies, or worse, homeless. This is not a way to live, to be in fear of what will happen with one sickness. Many families living in NYCHA have the same fear. We are also living with times of in despair because many families have done our best to pay our rent, but we are living in times where rent repairs are not done in a timely fashion, and we are not living in a healthy domicile. New York City lied about lead poisoning, damning children to lifelong brain damage, and now there's no heat or hot water. Developments without gas for over years, with the idea of New York City private partnership development facing overcrowding with threat of infill, eviction with the threat of RAD, displacement or with the threat of demolition. Real estate is the driving force behind most of these new deals and partnerships. With the household income requirement for a new development being $50,000 to $70,000 and the low-income middle-class yearly salary income only $25,000 to $40,000, there is a big wage gap. Does this sound like a solution to you? Well, it doesn't to me. How are people in NYCHA supposed to live with this threat? NYCHA tenants are living in deplorable conditions and have to resort to arguing with the management about repairs, waiting on a vendor list for months or years, using NYCHA or going on TV to help for their repairs. This is not a way to live. Only the brave go on TV to broadcast the conditions that they are living in. Residents become conditioned to believe that this is what they deserve for living in public housing. I don't deserve this. I do not. We are not less than. We are not. We are brave. We are activists. I am proud. So there's no shame in the fact that I am standing here telling you I live in NYCHA. I am raising my sons. I am proud of what I am doing, and we are fighters. And this is nothing to be ashamed of. The people who should be ashamed are NYCHA. They should be lining up here begging us to forgive them for what they have done over the years. The struggle of affordable, safe, clean, and adequate housing is in this richest country of the world is now at a critical stage because of the state of the federal government have neglected our homes for so long. Collectively, as a whole, NYCHA is facing mold, mildew problems, heat and hot water problems, infestation to say the least. These things don't happen overnight. Just like a baby, 9 months was not long enough to make this happen. Years of neglect, scandal, and mismanagement of funds is what has gotten us into this, and we are hoping and praying that a brand Green New Deal is what's going to bring us out of it. Because this is the change we are looking for. This is our new hope, and we are putting it behind this. NYCHA has produced many great people, and I'm not talking about celebrities. I am talking about the single mothers and the single fathers who work hard to put down and pay for those MSWs that their children are trying to finish. I'm talking about those mothers who put firefighters and policemen on the streets. I'm talking about the mothers and fathers who put nurses through college. I'm talking about those parents who work 2 and 3 jobs just to pay that rent. So those are the parents that I am talking about. Those are the NYCHA residents I am speaking of, because those celebrities who went through talked about it and left. But I'm talking about the ones who are still living in this deplorable conditions. I'm talking about myself, who I'm raising my kids, I'm working my jobs, but I'm still doing that. I'm out here being an activist because it is important. We have to shine a light on what is being done. I am not ashamed. I am not ashamed, and there's nothing to be ashamed of, because there are many people still living in this condition, and it is not right. But with a Green New Deal, things will change. We are looking towards the future, and things have got to change. The Green New Deal gives NYCHA residents hope for a brighter future. It will bring back the power to the tenants, improve the living conditions, develop economic opportunities, and create true affordable housing. And this is what we are looking for. We need a new future, a new NYCHA that is going to be economically affordable, and new buildings for new people. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
What do we want? Green New Deal. When do we want it?
Now.
What do we want?
A Green New Deal.
When do we want it?
Now.
When do we want it? Now. When do we want it? Now.
All right, I'm going to bring up the next speaker. Her name is Diane Yentel. She is the president of the National Low Income Housing Coalition. Diane. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you.
Today, on one of the coldest days in this early winter, hundreds of public housing residents in New York City have no heat in their homes. Seniors, people with disabilities, families with young kids, they are huddled in blankets using space heaters and open ovens to stay warm in federally funded housing developments. Incredibly, this isn't uncommon. NYCHA residents routinely suffer loss of heat and electricity, and they're not alone. As summers get hotter across the South, tens of thousands of public housing residents have no air conditioning or way to cool their homes. Public housing is home to nearly 1 million families and plays a critical role in providing safe, decent, accessible homes to those with the greatest needs. But public housing apartments across the country are deteriorating rapidly, a direct result of decades of federal disinvestment, a result of the federal government turning its back on its investment and on the millions of people who call public housing home. This disinvestment means not only lack of heat and cooling in some public housing homes, in others it means mold, lead hazards, leaky ceilings, leaky toilets. It means asthma, lead poisoning, sick children, sick families, increased cost to the health system. This is unacceptable. Congress must live up to its responsibility of safe, decent, accessible, and affordable homes for today's public housing residents and for future generations. And that's why the National Low Income Housing Coalition is so glad to stand today with Senator Sanders, with Congresswoman Ocasio-Cortez, and with other original co-sponsors of this bill to call for a bold, ambitious investment in our country's public housing and in the millions of people who call it home. This bill would not only preserve America's public housing for today's residents and for future residents, but it would make sure that those residents are the ones who benefit from the millions of jobs that are created. It would improve Section 3. It would give residents meaningful work, investing in their communities, opportunities to own and operate resident businesses, to manage the public housing themselves, and to have a seat at the table for the most important decisions about their own homes. We must build the political will to combat both the affordable housing and the climate crises. And I thank Senator Sanders and Congresswoman Ocasio-Cortez for their innovation, for their holistic vision for green, affordable housing in America. Let's get it done. So I'll introduce and bring up now Marcella Mulholland, who is an activist with the Sunrise Movement.
Hi, everyone. My name is Marcella. I'm part of Sunrise Movement and Next 100. So 1 year ago this week, some friends and I took a road trip from Orlando, Florida to DC. And on the long car ride up, I received a text message from my brother, who lives in California, and he sent me photos of the wildfires that were wreaking havoc across the state. As I looked at those pictures, I thought of the experiences that I had had growing up in coastal South Florida. I experienced climate-fueled sea level rise and hurricanes on a regular basis. And it's with those images in mind that the following day, myself and a couple hundred of my closest Sunrise friends, some of them are here today, walked up to Capitol Hill to take part in the now famous sit-in in Speaker Nancy Pelosi's office. Yeah. We were joined by the then recently elected Representative Ocasio-Cortez. I'll never forget sitting in that office and looking around at my friends who were singing songs and sharing stories about why they care about climate change and why we need a Green New Deal. There were TV screens on in the office above us showing live news coverage of the wildfires in California at the same time that we were doing the sit-in. That moment showed me a juxtaposition of the future options laid out for us. We can move to a world in climate chaos, where wildfires like those in California are increasingly frequent and severe. Or if I looked a little lower and I saw my friends, I saw a future laid out for us where young people rise up and demand climate justice. The urgency of our demands were literally following us into the room and reflected back to us on those screens. It's a moment I'll never forget. And that same urgency is with us today, as California once again is ravaged by wildfires and Venice is underwater. But something is different this time. Whereas 1 year ago, almost no one knew what the Green New Deal was, and some even called it a green dream. Now, 1 year later, the Green New Deal is a defining component of the progressive agenda. It's been endorsed by every major Democratic contender for president. Over 100 members of Congress have signed on as co-authors of the Green New Deal resolution, and thousands of young people across the country have mobilized to make the Green New Deal a reality. Yeah. And this momentum is only just beginning. The Green New Deal for Public Housing Act that we're announcing today is the first in a series of official Green New Deal bills that will set the governing agenda for the next decade. The decade of the Green New Deal. This bill acknowledges what the science makes clear. To stop climate change and prevent catastrophic human suffering, we need large-scale decarbonization that includes upgrading all existing buildings in the United States to achieve maximum energy efficiency. And what better place to start than with the hundreds of thousands of buildings and structures that the federal government already owns? Furthermore, what better place to start than with public housing buildings that are already in dire conditions and actively exposing people to harm? While the political establishment bails out banks and gives massive subsidies to the oil and gas industry, hundreds of thousands of low-income Americans are living in public housing buildings that are exposing them to toxic and inhumane conditions. Retrofitting and modernizing these buildings will improve the quality of life for residents while drastically reducing our greenhouse gas emissions. The Green New Deal for Public Housing Act shows that intersectional climate solutions are the future of climate policy. And this is critical because people don't live single-issue lives. We deserve quality, affordable housing and a stable climate. We deserve good jobs and a livable future. And in the richest country in the world, there's no reason we can't have both. If we make the Green New Deal and this bill a reality, no one will have to choose between a home that is giving their kids asthma or cancer and no home at all. Getting there won't be easy, but if there's one thing we've learned in the past year, it's that when we organize and demand what we need, when we back elected officials who are not bought out by fossil fuel billionaires, we can take the political establishment by storm. We can win the future we deserve. Now Carrie Fulton is going to speak. She's a policy fellow at the Climate Justice Alliance. Thanks.
Hello, how you doing? This Miss Lakeisha's kids, because Miss Lakeisha's kids are our kids, because all kids are our future. First and foremost, I want to thank Senator Bernie Sanders, Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez for having us. The Climate Justice Alliance is over 70-member organization, and it is led by Black and Brown and Indigenous people from all over the United States and our tribal territories. And we believe in a world where public housing residents no longer live in the shadow of polluting industries. The front lines of environmental and climate justice can be the leaders of the clean and just regenerative economy of our future. We have the solutions and we are the investment. And to be honest with you, we've been leading this for a long time. We want to lift up our ancestors like the late Hazel M. Johnson of the Chicago People for Community Recovery. There we go, who dedicated her life to advocating for building repairs and environmental protections for the residents of Altgeld Gardens who live in what she coined a toxic donut, surrounded by polluting industries on the south side of Chicago. Today, approximately 70% of public housing in America is within 1 mile of an extremely polluted, AKA Superfund site. The majority of HUD-owned public housing properties are over 40 years old and in dire need of repairs. Climate change, as many of you know, exacerbates these issues and increases resident vulnerability to extreme temperatures and natural disasters. However, our communities continue to showcase resiliency and empowerment. Grandfathers like Bo Luther and Wallace Kirby of Hustlers to Harvesters. There we go. What's up, DC? In Northeast DC, teaching gardening, solar, and carpentry skills to returning citizens and residents of Clay Terrace. Resident council presidents like Rhonda Hamilton push for better air quality while her neighborhood becomes a hotbed of development and gentrification. They do this work with little to no funding while working full-time jobs and caring for families. We need federal action for a just transition rooted in energy democracy that transforms public housing to healthy, community-owned cooperatives that empower residents while enhancing our future. Hello, future. How you doing? You good? The Green New Deal for Public Housing Act forms a foundation to increase resiliency, livability, and efficiency for urban as well as rural communities. The bill advances pathways for localized economies, local control, and self-determination, which are pillars of the Climate Justice Alliance's principles of energy democracy. Public housing has the potential to be a hub for climate and economic solutions. The mandates of this bill will increase opportunities for training and business development in a wide range of necessary job sectors. There we go. CJA understands that good policy can only be effective if the implementation of that policy is just and inclusive. Or as my colleagues with the Near Buzzard Point Resilient Action Committee say, clean this place, don't displace. Let me say it one more time for you. Clean this place, don't displace. A Green New Deal for public housing must uphold the rights of residents to stay in our revitalized communities. We must ensure that mandates to protect residents like Build First and one-to-one unit replacement are fully upheld and not just stated. We are in an affordable housing crisis. As public housing is falling apart, luxury high-rises are going up. The repeal of the Faircloth Amendment is necessary so we can provide more adequate housing for the 1.6 million people on waiting lists for public housing today. We also must protect against the loopholes that occur through privatization of public housing. As such, the best way to ensure this bill is effective is to include establishing and maintaining local residential control. We must build the infrastructure in these communities now, that will enable them to create self-managed and operated organizations that maintain homes while also recreating a renewable energy market that benefits them first and foremost. Furthermore, we must ensure that grant programs are readily accessible to residents and resident-led groups in a way that doesn't extract from their ability to organize and mobilize their communities. We believe in this Green New Deal, but we want it right. Thank you.
Next up, we've got Elzora Cleveland. She's an activist with New York Communities for Change. Hey. Woo, good afternoon, everyone. Elzora Cleveland, New York Communities for Change, affiliated with the Center for Popular Democracy. Woo! I have to say, I am super excited about being here. Thank you, Congresswoman. Thank you, Senator.
This is an amazing opportunity. I do have to give kudos, which is not a part of what I put together, to the chant leader, because coming 4 hours on a train, I wasn't expecting to hear Elliott houses, not Fulton houses, and Chelsea houses at this announcement. So it just warms my soul, and it brings a whole lot of positive energy into the space. I stand here today super excited about this thoughtfulness of the Green New Deal for public housing. Let me be specific. My mother lived in a NYCHA development for 50 years. That's who we leave behind when we graduate out and we move on. Our parents and our grandparents and our aunt, they're still there. Cancer ate away at my mother. And currently today, 7 of her best friends who are experiencing cancer battles now, which started after age 45, are struggling. Coincidence, perhaps? Maybe not. Maybe it's the conditions. Maybe it's access. Right? So true thoughtfulness was given to the creation of this bill, not only making conscious health benefiting suggestions like reducing carbon emissions to 0, going electric, why not? It's the best thing, upgrading the piping, but creating a livable environment with leadership, training, and opportunities that benefit and support the upkeep of these units. This bill includes creation of regularly needed assessment evaluations, allowing flexibility for community decision makers to prioritize and focus on their units. Ownership, right? Taking ownership of what is yours will make you keep quality within the spaces that you live in. But let's start with you, the government. They owe these buildings a lot of attention. Woo! Yes. Woo, I'm so excited. We're in a crisis as it relates to housing and homelessness. Homelessness is seriously spiking, and lots of fear is in every neighborhood. This bill brings comfort to my spirit, knowing that we not only are addressing the crisis with the opportunity to create public housing, but to offer the full wraparound services dedicated to those spaces. Recycling, zero waste programs, childcare centers, healthy eating options, and community gardens. Boy, you know, there was a time. There was a time, because I was born and raised in NYCHA, and there was a time. We have the tools and brilliant minds to make this country great again. Pun intended. Let's start with our residents and support the Green New Deal for public housing. Thank you, Congresswoman. Thank you, Senator. All in favor of the Green New Deal? Thank you so much. I want to bring to the mic Maurice Cook, Executive Director of Serve Your City, Washington, D.C.
Wait a minute, I heard something about Washington, D.C. We better give it up a little bit louder than that. I don't know if y'all know, this is Chocolate City. Yeah, I don't know if y'all know about this. And listen, there's a lot of work being done to change that. But we are here together today to say we are honored and blessed to stand on the land, the Piscataway and Nation land. You know, without their sacrifice, none of us would have anything that we have here in this blessed, beautiful land, right? So we got to give props and respect to that. Also, this is Chocolate City, right? All right. So listen. I'm cold. I'm not used to this type of weather. It's really difficult for me. I'm gonna be honest with you. It gets harder and harder as I get older. So y'all know this chant. We have some local issues that we're dealing with here right now in Washington, D.C. And listen, I care about what happens around this nation and around this world. But believe you, I'm going to protect this place first, right? Washington, D.C. We got to take care of home first, and our work is hyper-local. So that we have some public housing developments that are under attack right now. So when something's under attack, I'm gonna name some names, brother. I know you know what to do. So listen up. Hey, when Kelly Miller Walkups is under attack, what do we do? Stand up like that. Hey, when Greenleaf Additions and Greenleaf Gardens are under attack, what do we do? Stand up like that. Okay, when Fort DuPont Dwellings is under attack, what do we do? Stand up like that. Hey, when Stoddard Terrace is under attack, what do we do? Stand up like that. And when Benning Terrace is under attack, what do we do? Stand up like that. When Langston Terrace is under attack, our first public housing development in the entire nation is under attack, what do we do? Stand up like that. When Garfield Senior Terrace is under attack, what do we do? Stand up like that. Hey, look, that's just here locally. We got a lot of work to do. And that's why we have Senator Sanders and Representative Ocasio-Cortez. We are blessed to have them and thank them for bringing us all together, bringing this nation together, because these people really represent who we really are, right? And so we got to help them. We got to do the real work. I said, listen, there's an inside game and there's an outside game. Some of us are inside and some of us are outside, right? And so we all got work to do. But again, my name is Maurice Cook. I'm executive director and founder of Serve Your City. We are a DC-based nonprofit organization that fights to make sure that DC underserved youth, black and brown, have everything that everybody else has. And I'll do whatever it takes to make sure that happens. I'm also a member organizer of the Black Workers and Wellness Center for One DC, organizing neighborhood equity. And what we do is we try to take care of everybody that comes through our door. If you're in need of support, that's what we try to do. I do have some points that I wanted to make about the New Deal here, the New Green Deal. Basically, for us, One DC has a list of demands. We demand the halt of any demolition of any and all public housing developments, both locally and nationally. We demand the hiring of public housing tenants on all development and renovation projects.
Section 3.
That's right, that's right. And we are very supportive of the New Green Deal public housing because we love its focus on job training and employment of the public housing residents and protecting community sustainability, and most importantly, the right to return of any and all public housing residents displaced from this city. Let's say that again. The right to return of any and all public housing residents displaced from this city. Come on, y'all can say it with me. The right to return of any and all public housing residents through displacement from this city. These principles are aligned with our principles in the People's Platform, specifically that right to return and the reclamation of any and all of DC residents forced out of the District of Columbia by developers via gentrification and city policy. Right? See, there's something going on. Our public lands, our tax money is being used to fund developers, right? To finance developers. This is a money issue. Our public lands, right, and our tax dollars are being used to enrich developers on our backs, on our lands. They're being don't make me tell the truth. Don't make me tell the truth. Don't make me tell the truth. Listen. Our city uses our housing, our folks with housing insecurity. They use them as a canard to say, hey, look, we're dealing with homelessness, right? Where the developers get a great financing deal using public housing vouchers. That's the game. That's the game, right? And so we have to fight with our public officials who say, hey, we're doing such a great job. It brings and aligns strange bedfellows, right? We have folks who are NIMBYisms, the NIMBY folks fighting with the community activists, but for different reasons, right? For different reasons. Because we don't believe in the intent of the developers. We don't believe in the intent of our city officials. And I had to say this last night so crazily. And people look at me as if I'm crazy. They can say, oh, you don't want to support people who are in permanent supportive housing or homeless shelters? I absolutely want to support that. I want all of our land to be public housing, right? That's the world that I'm looking for, because I believe in the right for everyone to have a home. That's what I believe. I do, listen, at One DC, we don't fight for the market income market rate. We fight to make sure that everybody has the right and deserves a home. And that's what it's all about. We have to stop being afraid of saying what we really actually want, right? I mean, listen, the way we've done it so far has gotten us to this place. in my neighborhood, on Capitol Hill, this is where I live, in this neighborhood, in 2000, 62% black, 32% white. In 2017, 62% white and 30% black. Does that happen by happenstance? No, there are policies and deals, business deals being made to ensure that takes place. And class warfare and the inclusionary zoning, opportunity zones, economic racism. I often say, listen, we have Hey, look, I'm getting everybody started, right? I'm getting everybody started. Hey, look, we Hope 6. Oh, look, there we go. Don't get me started. Hey, look, okay, I've been told to get off the mic, but listen, I gotta say this. I have environmentalist folks come to us, say, we want to organize black folks, poor folks. We want to organize black folks. And I tell them, listen, black people have been fighting for climate change because of the environmental racism we have to deal with every day. And so somehow we have to unite our people and say, listen, there are impacts that we feel on a daily basis, right? I understand that you may be privileged enough to be fighting for a disaster in the future, but that disaster is right here for us, right? And so we just have to keep working, keep talking, keep building, keep loving, and do this work together. Thank you, guys. My name is Maurice Cook. Thank you so much.
We've got time for 1 to 2 questions. I think quiero empezar con Telemundo. ¿Tenemos Telemundo aquí? Yeah? No? Okay. So we'll start with 1 to 2 questions. Annika, do you want to facilitate who we take it from? All right, cool.
Congresswoman, Senator, are you concerned with all of the focus on impeachment ongoing that legislation like this and other priorities of yours are going to not get the attention that you think it deserves?
I'm not concerned about it because the thing that we show with the impeachment of the president is that we can hold the White House accountable and also build our future at the same time. This is not an either-or proposition. I'm sure Republicans would like to lead you to believe that this place shuts down, but we just came from votes right now over here. So we're passing this agenda. We're centering everyday working people, and I absolutely refuse for any day that I am a member of Congress to not spend that time fighting for our community. And that's what this is all about.
Trump should be impeached, and he will be impeached. But that does not mean that we neglect or ignore the other major crises facing this country, whether it is the housing crisis and the particular tragedies existing in public housing in Vermont, in New York, all over this country, and the global crisis of climate change. All right? We are mature enough as a nation to walk and chew bubble gum at the same time.
Let him know,
And one more thing. Let's not pretend. That's right, Theo Bernie speaking on it. But let's not act or pretend that Donald Trump is not a climate crisis unto himself. Because he has put foxes in the hen house in the charge of EPA, in charge of public housing, in charge of virtually every federal agency that we have. And so if we want to protect our planet, we also need to make sure that holding the president accountable in this White House is a part of that too. Oh, okay. Sorry, y'all. I'm sorry we got to go. But thank you all so much for coming. We'll be happy
Thank you, guys. Thank you.